I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Slaughter. Happy to have you, Joe. Well, we're going to get started this morning, Tuesday morning, with the ongoing pressure the Trump administration faces over its handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case.
The president's spat with media mogul Rupert Murdoch over the situation is now taking center stage. The White House has removed reporters from Murdoch's Wall Street Journal from a group set to accompany President Trump on his upcoming trip to Scotland. This follows the Journal's report last week that Mr. Trump wrote Epstein a birthday message in 2003 that featured a drawing of a naked woman. The president has denied writing that message. The White House told reporters yesterday that the president, quote, knows what his supporters want when it comes to the Epstein case. Just last week, Republican Speaker of the House Johnson said everything must come out in the Epstein case, but now he's backing away from that. Well, Democrats remain firm on full disclosure of what's known about the convicted sex offender.
My belief is we need the administration to have the space to do what it is doing, and if further congressional action is necessary or appropriate, then we'll look at that. But I don't think we're at that point right now because we agree with the president.
The right thing to do is to present the facts and the evidence to the American people so that they can make an informed decision about what may or may not have happened and who may or may not be implicated.
Meanwhile, it's a busy day ahead for President Trump as he's set to meet with the president of the Philippines today at the White House, where tariffs and trade are likely to be front and center.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now from Washington with the latest. Monica, good morning. So we know the president is facing this backlash from MAGA supporters about the handling of files related to Epstein. He spent the last couple of days airing some old grievances on social media, things that are popular with his base. So walk us through the administration's strategy, how it's trying to handle the Epstein case right now and shift focus. And part of that strategy includes removing the Wall Street Journal from covering Mr. Trump's trip to Scotland.
Exactly, Joe. The president is supposed to be heading to Scotland at the end of the week. And look, it is up to their discretion who is a part of that group of reporters that will be accompanying him on Air Force One. So they have decided to remove the Wall Street Journal reporter who was slated to be there. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it is. Remember, the Associated Press back during the beginning of the administration was also removed from the rotation of those in the reporting group that likely and often does cover whatever the president is doing. That even went to court, and ultimately the Trump administration was the one that was victorious. So that is why they're arguing that they have the grounds to make this kind of a move. And we've seen this before. This is a White House and a president who certainly likes to go to battle with the press. And this is an extension of that. And it maybe is a part of trying to put the focus elsewhere and also trying to go through with this kind of reaction that the president did threaten if the Wall Street Journal went ahead with the story, which we know they did. In addition to that, this is a White House that is also trying to maybe bring up other things and focus on other stories so that people stop talking about the Epstein fallout. But we know that when it comes to this, it's the president's own base and supporters that are not yet satisfied because they are calling for more information. Joe and Savannah.
Monica, another headline, we mentioned this a moment ago, this is coming out of the White House yesterday. This was this release of more than 230,000 pages of documents related to the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. It's something Dr. King's children expressed concern over. Why is that? What's in these documents? Why now?
Yeah, and the family specifically put out a statement saying that they want to make sure that if these documents are to be released in the way that they were, that it would be within the full historical context. And they say, the family, that they want to make sure that nothing that could come out would impact his extremely important legacy. That is their perspective and their concern, of course, even though there was a family member, a niece, who thanked the Attorney General for putting out some of this information, which did focus on the man who was convicted of murdering Martin Luther King Jr. And it really details some of the investigations into his life, investigations specifically into some of the leads that they had in the case when they were trying to also find more information. But it comes at a time where the president, remember, had ordered more information to be released about the assassination of former President John F. Kennedy, of Robert Kennedy as well. And so they are saying that they are making good on that promise, but some are observing that at a time when, again, there's more information that is being called for to be released related to Jeffrey Epstein in the Department of Justice. Instead, they released this information yesterday. And again, there are questions about whether there could be grand jury testimony related to Jeffrey Epstein that could come out, which is what the president says he's calling for now.
Monica, I want to bring up another issue here. It's been a few weeks since we know President Trump signed his tax cut and spending package into law, what he called the big, beautiful bill. Now we're learning even more as we've had more time to analyze it about how much the package is going to add to the national debt. What have we learned?
$3.4 trillion over the next decade. And that was a major concern of even some of the Republicans who were holdouts on that piece of legislation. But something else that we're learning, Joe and Savannah, is this confirmation that more than 10 million people are going to lose their health insurance because of the proposed cuts to Medicaid that now have been signed into law with this massive, massive bill.
Monica, also, let's look ahead to today. President Trump's hosting the president of the Philippines. What can we expect there?
Yeah, and this is, of course, an important trading and economic relationship and partner. And so the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., is coming with the hope and expectation that they can maybe iron out a trade work agreement. Remember that there is all of this promise from the president that he was going to try to have 90 deals in 90 days. That did not take place. There's only a handful of those. But they are thinking that after today, it's possible that there could be some kind of handshake agreement without maybe the details. We know that the president, for his part, had put out this idea that there could be a 20% tariff rate on the Philippines if they don't come up with some kind of an agreement before August 1st. So a real push to do that with an important ally in the Pacific, guys.
And that deadline coming quickly. Monica Alba, thank you.
Well, across the country, millions of people are bracing for yet another sweltering day. The temperatures are expected to soar into the triple digits across the Southeast and the Great Plains. Now, some places may even see that heat index value reach 110 degrees or higher. But the threat of heat is just a part of the severe weather hitting the U.S. this summer. More rain is on the way. That is threatening to bring more flash floods to the upper Midwest and portions of the South. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson is on the ground in Houston with more.
Yeah, hey there, good morning from a not yet sweltering Houston, Texas, but it will soon get very hot here, as we are going to see across the country today. We are talking about some 54 million people who are under heat alerts from Kansas to Mississippi. People are bracing for temperatures that are going to feel like they're in the triple digits. Some areas seeing temperatures that are going to feel up to 112 degrees. It is going to be hot today. Meanwhile, you also have folks in parts of the Midwest and Kansas in some areas dealing with this very heavy rain and severe flooding. Unfortunately, we learned that in Overland Park, Kansas, a 62-year-old woman actually was killed after she was swept away by floodwaters, and we saw a number of rescues taking place there. And so there remains a severe weather threat in those areas. But for most of the country, it is going to be about the heat today. You can see the folks behind me have the right idea, which is to get into the pool and get those laps in before the sun comes out and really turns this day into a scorcher. And of course, if you are going to be outside today, you want to make sure that you're wearing that sunscreen, staying hydrated. And if you're starting to feel a little off, go inside, cool off, and just do what you can to stay cool while also, of course, enjoying the summer.
Oh, all right, Priscilla, thank you so much. Stay
As
cool.
she mentioned, the sizzling summer heat does continue today. Tens of millions are under heat alerts.
Angie Lastman is here to tell us where. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Priscilla's exactly right. Temperature is going to surge here as the day goes on. And by the time we get into our warmest point of the day, we're talking triple-digit feels like temperatures for a whole lot of folks. So no surprise that we've got lots of folks under these heat alerts. They stretch from the plains down to the Gulf Coast. And where you see this brightest pink, those are heat warnings. So Little Rock, St. Louis, all included in those. And that means that those heat index values are going to be close to 115 degrees. Some of these alerts, just beware, they're going to last into Thursday. So we've got a couple of days of this kind of oppressive heat that we're going to have to deal with across this region. Today, we're expecting to hit the 90s for the actual temperature in St. Louis, Omaha, Dodge City, Fort Worth, Birmingham. Honestly, you name it, and we've got temperatures at least into the 90s from the Gulf Coast up into the Midwest. When you add in the humidity levels, our feels like temperatures are going to be well above 100 in some spots. So Little Rock, 108 is the peak heat index value you're expected. St. Louis, even warmer, 109 degrees, 111 for what it'll feel like in Tallahassee later this afternoon. So again, it's going to be quite warm and uncomfortable. And that goes for tomorrow, too, across some of these same spots. 100 degrees for Memphis, feeling like 110. 104 for what it'll feel like in Dallas, Lake Charles, 108 heat index in Mobile. And then by the time we get into the late week, really Thursday and beyond, we'll start to see some of that heat spread a little farther to the east. So Friday in New York City, expect the mid-90s, of course, with humidity. It'll feel much warmer than that, and it's the high 90s for Washington, D.C. on Friday. This kind of summer-like heat continues with us, at least for the next couple of days. And so we're concerned, of course, about those health-related impacts. And where you see the orange, that means moderate risk. So we've basically got the potential, if you're outside for a long time, to see some health-related issues. issues, but heat-related issues for sure. If you live anywhere from Jacksonville to New Orleans and up through Little Rock and even parts of the Midwest where you can see that brighter red, that's where we'll have a major risk for heat-related health impacts through the day today. So watching out for the most vulnerable of our populations, of course, your friends, your neighbors, all going to want to find a cool spot today. And otherwise, guys, got a couple of thunderstorms we'll track in parts of the upper Midwest.
But not too much rain. That's good.
Not too much rain. Yeah.
Thanks,
Oh,
Angie.
really good. Thank you.
You got it.
Well, the FAA and Air Force are investigating that close call we've been talking about over North Dakota. This was on Friday when that B-52 bomber and a Delta Airlines regional jet carrying 80 people nearly collided as the bomber was performing a flyover at the North Dakota State Fair. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the latest.
Amateur video at the North Dakota State Fair captured the Delta Airlines regional jet flown by SkyWest making a sharp turn as the biggest bomber in the Air Force fleet, a B-52, roars over the crowd below.
For those of you on the right-hand side, you probably saw the airplane kind of sort of coming at us. Nobody told us about it.
After making a hard 25-degree bank to the right, then diving, the SkyWest pilot apologized to the passengers on board.
So sorry about the aggressive maneuver. It caught me by surprise. This is not normal at all. I don't know why they didn't give us a heads up, because the Air Force Base does have radar, and nobody said, hey, there's also a B-52 in the pattern.
Passenger Monica Green says the sudden turn felt very sharp.
I just remember the plane going like sideways like that and just looking straight out the window and just seeing grass.
It happened just 1,000 feet above the ground. In a statement, SkyWest says Flight 3788 had been cleared for approach by the tower, but performed a go-around when another aircraft became visible in their flight path. The Minot Tower doesn't have radar. It operates on visual flight rules. The FAA says the tower is run by a private company, and these controllers are not FAA employees.
I'm not sure the B-52 crew even knew that the Delta airplane was there. And they were not talking to the same controller.
It comes just 6 months after an Army Black Hawk helicopter collided with an American Eagle regional plane, killing 67 people over Washington. The private company that operates the Minot Tower is deferring all questions to the FAA. The military tells NBC News that B-52 was flying on an approved flight path. Back to you.
All right, Tom, thank you.
The death toll in Bangladesh continues to rise this morning after a fighter jet crashed into a school. At least 27 people were killed, 25 of them children. Military officials say dozens more were injured at that school in the nation's capital. NBC News chief international correspondent Richard Engel has the latest.
The pilot of the F-7 fighter jet was on a training flight and smashed into the K-12 school just after takeoff. First responders combed through the charred building. The plane crash happened in the middle of the afternoon while the school was full of teachers and students. I was picking up my kids and I heard something coming from behind. When I looked back, I only saw smoke and fire, this teacher said. Parents rushed to find and pick up their children while others watched recovery efforts in horror. Jewel found his daughter alive amid the wreckage. When I came here, I saw there was a huge fire and the dead body of a child, he said. In a statement, the military said the aircraft had a technical malfunction. The pilot was killed, along with at least 20 students and teachers.
Richard Engel for that report. An initial report by the armed services said the pilot tried to steer the plane to a less densely populated area. The military says more details will be released after an investigation.
Well, in a stunning legal development, the man found guilty for the 1979 murder and kidnapping of 6-year-old Eitan Pates that horrified New York City could soon get a new trial or even walk free. Those are the orders of a federal appeals court which overturned the 2017 conviction against Pedro Hernandez yesterday. He has been serving a life sentence of 25. He's been serving a sentence, of 25 years to life. The Manhattan DA's office now says it's reviewing that decision. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk explains.
6-year-old Eitan Pates disappeared on May 25, 1979, on his way to the school bus stop in New York City. The crime shocked the country. He was never found.
Eitan simply disappeared.
Nearly 40 years later, in 2017, the state of New York convicted former shop clerk Pedro Hernandez. Pates' father speaking after the murder verdict.
It's about time. It really is.
But tonight, a federal appeals court has overturned the conviction. In its ruling, the three-judge panel says instructions given to the jury during deliberations prejudiced the verdict.
It is really, really rare that this happens because the legal standard is so stringent. There has to be judicial error, but also that error must be harmful or have mattered.
With no physical evidence, the case focused on a confession. According to today's decision, Hernandez, who has a history of mental illness, admitted to the crime after approximately 7 hours of questioning, before being read his Miranda rights. Investigators recorded him admitting to the crime again after he was read his rights. But Hernandez ultimately recanted, and questions surrounding that confession led to a hung jury when the case was first tried in 2015. In 2017, Hernandez was convicted. His defense team writing in a statement, "For more than 13 years, Pedro Hernandez has been in prison for a crime he did not commit, and based on a conviction that the Second Circuit has now made clear was obtained in clear violation of law." Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Angela Sanadella. Angela, thank you so much for being here. So can you just break down the part that this new decision kind of all hinges on here, this part about jury instructions?
Yeah, so it has to do with the Miranda rights. So we all know that before suspects are interrogated, they have to be read their Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. But what police officers, many of them were doing for years, is that they would interrogate without the Miranda rights, get a confession, and then they would read the Miranda rights, get a repetition of the confession, then they would submit that secondary confession as admissible evidence. Now, in 2004, the Supreme Court ruled that this practice was just wildly unconstitutional and that secondary repetitive confession is more often than not inadmissible because it's a fruit of a totally unconstitutional process. And so what happened here is that the jury asked the judge, is there a problem with the secondary confession, given that the first one was obtained prior to this Miranda warning? Now, they didn't use that exact wording, but that's essentially what they asked the judge. And the judge just said no. And this was during deliberations. So obviously that was in direct contradiction to Supreme Court precedent, which is what the appellate court is saying here.
So if there is a retrial, essentially what could happen with the confession? And if there is no confession, does the prosecution have a case?
Right. So it would likely be considered inadmissible here. Now, the Supreme Court didn't say in every single situation it is inadmissible. It's just more often than not, most likely it is not. So if there was a retrial, the defense would likely raise this and get it struck. And if there is no confession, look, there's really no other evidence in this case. There's no physical evidence. There's no digital evidence. It really relied and hinged on this confession.
I want to read something. This is from Hernandez's legal representative in a statement. They said, "We are grateful the court has now given Pedro a chance to get his life back. I call upon the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to drop these misguided charges and focus their efforts where they belong on finding those actually responsible for the disappearance of Eitan Pates." So the DA says that it's considering the federal appeals court ruling that this story was this moment that changed New York. Where do you think this goes next, given all that?
I think it's going to be very difficult for this DA to retry this case, given, again, just the lack of additional evidence. But it's always up to the DA's discretion. Also, it wasn't this DA who brought the case, right? It was actually the last DA. And so there's, a fair amount of wiggle room there where he can just say that was Cyrus Vance's decision and I'm making a new one.
All right, Angela Sanadella, thank you so much.
The former Louisville police officer who fired into Breonna Taylor's home during a botched raid in 2020 has been sentenced to nearly 3 years behind bars. Brett Hankinson was sentenced to 33 months yesterday after he was convicted last year of deprivation of rights under color of law in connection with the raid that killed Taylor. Prosecutors say Hankinson fired through a window and sliding glass door that was covered with a curtain. The shots hit a wall and traveled into an apartment next door. Taylor was killed by shots from other officers who were not charged in the case. Hankinson will also serve 3 years probation after his prison term ends. The Justice Department last week said the former cop should be sentenced to a single day in prison, time he had already served, arguing that he posed no threat.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.